Thank you, Humana, and welcome everyone. I am Chris Williams and I get to be your lead teacher this evening. And along with me here in the studio, I do have Dylan Estes with us today. So Dylan's going to help by moderating some of your comments and your questions. So shout them out because Dylan's here to either try and answer them for you or he will pass them along to me. I want to welcome you all to our Paint Night Live tonight here in the Michaels Community Classroom. And you know what? I thought it's January. It's in most parts of the world very cold. It's very snowy. Many states here in the United States, I know, especially our northern states, are just getting blasted with lots and lots of snow. Here in the Atlanta, Georgia area, believe it or not, Dylan and I even experienced some snow a couple weeks ago. So I thought, here it is, the end of January. Let's paint a snowman. And then I also thought it's so close to Valentine's Day. So why not let our little snowman have a few hearts in the air all around him and just to kind of share with everyone that love is in the air this time of year. So let's get right into painting our Love is in the Air snowman. And this is an 8x10 canvas. I want to share with you that the first things, all of you probably have the supply list and printed out the pattern that was attached as part of the supply list. What I normally do when I get these patterns is I usually make a tracing paper sample of that pattern. And I usually begin with this rather than with the printed paper because you can see through this. And what I usually do is I will center this on top of my canvas. And then I use an artist tool that's kind of like a carbon paper, an artist carbon paper, although it is not real typewriter carbon paper. It's called gray graphite or gray transfer paper. This is a sheet that I've used many, many times. It's well worn. I'll bring it up. You can see I have used and used and used this so many different times. Transfer paper is a shiny side and a matte side. And you want to put the business side down, the shiny side down onto the canvas or the surface that you're working with. And you kind of hold this in place either with your fingers or you can even grab a piece of blue painter's tape to tape and secure your paper down to the surface. And then I always use a tool that is a stylus. And this one is a double-ended stylus. A stylus is kind of very similar to like a, trying to get it to focus on the point here for you. It's kind of like a dead ballpoint pen. That would work the same thing too. Once you have this in place, you then use the pointed end of the stylus to trace and transfer around the pattern lines. And when you're all said and done, and I did mine ahead of time. So if you have your pattern, you can go ahead and start tracing and transferring yours now. Or if you've already done it, it's going to look very similar to this. You're going to see the pattern on the canvas, just like I have here. Now, I do want to share with you that I did not transfer the outside hearts that are kind of in the air floating around our snowman because we're going to paint out here. And I thought it might just cover up those little squared off heart shapes. So we can add those on later. But let's go ahead and get ready to start painting. I'm going to set this aside so that you can still see it on camera while we were working with our patterned canvas. And let's go ahead and get some colors out onto our palette. I'm going to work tonight with the original formula of the FolkArt acrylics. They dry to such a beautiful matte finish. And I'm going to go ahead and get some white out on my palette first. I'm using a waxed paper palette here off to the side. And I have white. And you can use Wicker White, which was on the supply list. Or if you don't have that, a titanium white would work as well. And I'm also going to go ahead and get out a little bit of our blue. Our blue is Ultramarine Blue. And Ultramarine Blue is a really beautiful, bright, bright blue. You don't need a lot, but just put a little bit out onto your palette. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to begin on the body of the snowman. And I'm going to take a brush that is probably a number 10 or a number 12 flat brush. And I'm just going to load it first. I'm going to scoot this over a little bit more so you can see. I'm going to load the brush with the white and I am stroking into the puddle of the paint Then I'm going to flip my brush over and I'm going to stroke and fill up both sides of the flat brush. In other words, I'm not going in and dipping up a big scoop of white paint. And is there an alternate color for ultramarine blue? I just saw that question. A good color would be another bright, patriotic color blue. It could be, let's see. You could use medium blue. You could use a cobalt blue if you've got either one of those. You just kind of want a nice, bright, cheery blue. Try not to get like a gray blue. And what I'm going to do real quickly is just, and you can, those of you that are painting along with me, you may not be able to see much of my pattern line right now. I'm just going to base in the shape of his arm really quickly, long, smooth, straight strokes. And then I'm going to come a little bit, I'm going to work a little section at a time. I'm going to come into like his chest or his belly area up to where I have transferred the shape of his buttons. And what I'm going to do while this is still wet, because we only have an hour together tonight, we're going to work very quickly. I have still a full brush full of all Wicker White. And what I did now is I came into the area where the puddle of the blue is, and I just tipped a corner of my brush into that blue. And I'm going to show you, see, there's blue only on one little portion of that brush. And now I'm going to come and blend here on the side of my palette. I want that blue to turn to a very pale blue. I don't want it really stark white. And now you can see as I'm holding my brush up and the camera's focusing on it, it's a much paler blue now because I really worked that white that was in the brush and the blue that I added on the corner to create like a very pale blue there. And what I'm going to do, I'll show you here on my sample here, is I'm going to come right along in here where his arm is on top of his chest. So the area of the blue is going to come in real close. Can you see here? There's an area of blue right in through there. That's all we're going to do with this. And I'm going to hold my brush with the blue right next to that line. So I'm just kind of patting short little choppy strokes, patting that color on just to put a little shading right behind on his body, behind where the arm is. While I still have that mixture in my brush, I'm going to do the same thing, patting along where his collar of his scarf here is flowing onto the body. So we want to kind of shade and give a little bit of a hint of blue to shade again his body from where this scarf is going to be. So I'm just again working with that white in my brush and that ultramarine blue. I can even bring it down the arm just a little bit. You don't have to go the whole distance of the arm because we are going to give color to the outside shape of him. So we can just come down that arm a little bit. So now what I've done is I've shaded just a little bit of the outside of the arm. I shaded a little bit heavier on the inside of his arm against his chest or his body. And then we shaded across this top part here where his scarf is going to be. And we'll do the, yes.
So I just wanted to acknowledge, you know, we do have a lot of people in the chat that look like they're painting along, but maybe they didn't have time to print the pattern. The pattern should have been with your confirmation. If you didn't get it, we will get it to you. And you can always go back and watch this. We always recommend anyways, pay attention to this lesson and then go back and paint along with the recorded lesson on Michael's YouTube channel.
That's a good idea, Dylan. And thank you for telling me that. If by chance you are painting along, that's great. If you feel like, because we have to work at such a quick pace tonight, if you feel like you fall behind, there's no shame in that. Feel free to just kind of pull back, sit, watch, and listen. This video is being recorded and you will have access to it within 12 to 24 hours later and be able to paint along with me at your own convenience and your own time frame if you like. But if you are painting along with me, that's great too. If you have any questions, keep shouting them out to Dylan because he's here to help me and keep us all on track. So what we've done at this point is we're going to reverse the same concept and we're going to come in and shade along, again, the inside of his arm. If you have transferred the shape of the heart, just kind of work around that heart. We're just going up the arm a little bit and then along where the scarf is. And we're going to put just a little bit of shading around those red, or what will be his red mittens. And I'm sorry if you didn't see the pattern. The pattern was on the supply list. The very last item on the supply list said something like download your template here.
So we apologize for that, guys. We know it's kind of hard to find, especially if you don't take, our Michael's community classrooms super often. So like we said, you can always go back and watch this again. Chris will teach it the exact same way that she's teaching.
Yes, yes. And if for some reason you did not get the pattern, let me know if there's many of you, and I'll be glad to share that pattern in our Let's Paint with Plaid Facebook group. And we can make sure you get access to that pattern that way too. Okay, what I did just now for time's sake is I did exactly what we did here on the opposite side. So we shaded around the top of this arm, but it's not on the arm itself, but on his belly area. And then I came a little bit on the outside of this arm. And that's all I'm going to do to the top part right now. For the base of his body, we're just going to pick up mostly the white, and we're just going to paint in the belly or the whole body of him, his skirt, if you will, or his lower portion of him, all with the white. And we're going to work around where the mittens are, work around where the arms are. And we're just going to fill this in again, very quickly, long, smooth strokes, so that we can get a lot of space covered in a short period of time. And we will come back and do a little shading on this area too.
Now, while you're doing that, Chris, we have had someone, thank you so much, to G. Vincent in the chat. They have linked the pattern. So if for some reason it wasn't on your email, that pattern can be found in the chat. We've got 2 links right now.
Oh, that's awesome. Thank you so much for sharing. Okay, now what I did, I pretty much put white all on the lower portion of his body while I still had that brush mostly loaded with my white. And again, I'm using Wicker White. You could also use titanium white. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to dip just a corner of it into that blue. I'm blending on my palette just like we did for the top half of his body. And I'm going to put a little bit of blue. I'm holding the brush so that it's on the body, not on the arm, but I'm bringing that blue underneath the bottom of the arm, as well as around the mittens and the body of the arm on the other side. So we are just going to put a little bit of shadow or shading color of this light blue on the lower portion of his body. So now you could see that his arms and his mittens are raised above the lower portion of his body. And he's got some buttons, probably more like lumps of coal from when he was built in the snow there. And I'm going to put just a little bit of shadow around those. If you transferred those lines, that's great. If you didn't, just think about like little irregular circles. I have 3 on the bottom of his body and 2 lumps of coal at the top. So I just took that brush that has mostly white with just a little bit of the blue in there, and I'm tapping along what would be the bottom of that little rock or lump of coal. And we're doing kind of like a half circle around that. We're not covering up the full little circle of where the lumps of coal are. This is going to give a little bit of dimension and raise that little lump of coal.
Chris, what size brush are you using?
I'm using a number 10 or a number 12.
Perfect.
Either one would work, Dylan. And you can see I just added 2 more here at the top. There's a lump of coal here, and then there's one up here. And I just roughly, just like pat, 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 very quickly put a little bit of blue to kind of create like a little shadow from where those lumps of coal are going to be. And now, of course, our snowman has a head that needs to be painted. So I'm just still same brush. I haven't cleaned my brush. I just keep adding more white from time to time. I'm now going to go move up to the head of our snowman. And by now you might even have a little bit of blue in that cast of that white that you keep picking up, and that's okay. When you look at snow, no snow, and those of you that live up there in the cold north and you're living in snow right now, you already know when you look at snow, it's not just always solid white. And so I'm now kind of putting some color in on his face, and I have some of my blues showing through, and that's quite all right. I'm going to do the same thing. I want to create just a small little shadow at the top of his head where his cap meets his forehead. So if you think about the cap of his head coming across here, I'm going to hold my brush so that it's on the face or on the head with the blue side going right up next to that cap, right up next to the line of the hat. And I'm just, again, patting that blue on. We're going to put a little bit of a shadow at the top of his head. Yeah, I do transfer my eyes. You don't have to, but if you transferred your eyes, I kind of painted around mine. If not, no worries. We're just going to be little small black dots, so it's not going to be a problem at all. The next thing I'm going to do, I am cleaning out my brush because we're going to move on to the background to get that on real quickly. And I'm going to go ahead and add some licorice to my palette. That is our black. If you don't have licorice, pure black would work too. So I'm just going to put some black out, and I'm going to continue. I'm going to move this over a little bit more, so again you can still see all that color. I'm going to load my 3/4 inch flat brush. That's a larger brush, almost an inch wide, 3/4 of an inch flat brush. Same way, I'm loading both sides of that brush with white. Now I'm going to load just an ever so small amount of that black. I'm going to hold this up and I'll show you. If you want to look up, you can see that it's just a little bit. It's not even a quarter the width of that 3/4 inch brush. And what I'm going to do now is I am going to blend on my palette with some pressure. And we're going to do a technique to create this mottled effect in the background called slip slap. So I'm going to slip my brush down flat like this, and then I'm going to flip the brush over and I'm going to slap it. Slip, slap, slip, slap. So I'm going on both sides of the brush. I'm alternating the brush and I'm moving in different directions. And the more you slip slap in an area, the more mottled it's going to become. Can you see how softly blending this area here is right here? You can pick up more white. You can pick up a little bit more of your gray. Be very careful when you go up next to your little snowman and to his extending scarf. Basically, we're going to take this technique all the way around the full body of the snowman. Now, when you look at mine, you notice that I have mine a little bit darker in the corners. Don't worry about darkening your corners now. That's something we can do at the very end. But what you're going to do is just continue slipping and slapping to get that color on the entire area around our snowman. Be careful not to overblend. When I said you're going to slip and you're going to slap, you're going to just go back and forth, and you can kind of go it a couple times to kind of blend or soften some of that color in, but don't overdo it because you do want to see a textured background. You do want to see some slipping and some slapping, and you do want to see some brush marks. Sometimes people say, I see too many brush marks. Well, that's a good thing. We do want you to see the texture. So again, I just stop and keep reloading my brush, mostly white, a little bit of the gray here and there. And just slip and slap that on, softly blending, but not over blending. Any questions for anyone on the slip slap technique? It's really very easy, and it gives you a very interesting background too. You can use this on florals, use it on so many different things.
Now, we did have a question earlier about if they needed to base coat, but that's what I was kind of getting to. We just started on a plain gessoed canvas, and then you're adding your quote unquote base coat now.
Yes.
Background.
You're right, Dylan. And one reason why I'm doing it this way, if you were painting at home or wanted to paint a second one, you could do the whole entire background with this technique Then let that dry. Then you could transfer the shape of your snowman on top of this. But remember, here in the Michaels Community Classrooms, we only have about an hour to paint together. So we sometimes have to create a little bit of a different way of doing things so that we can cover a lot of instruction in a very short time period. So I might have, if I was painting this at home in my own leisure, painted it a little bit differently and painted my background first before I painted my snowman on top. But because of time's sake today, we're just kind of making our background and our base color here all at the same time we're painting our project. Down there, I'm sorry, Dylan, did you have one other one?
So I think you're using a 1-inch flat. Is that what you're?
This is a 3/4 inch flat brush.
Okay.
And I just was going to caution you all, there is a little section between the long tail of his hat and his body. So bring some of that background color up in between the hat and the body too. Don't forget that area. Okay, I've got mine done and I'm going to go ahead and move on. The next thing I want us all to do is to get a little bit of our red color out, and that I'm using a color, a beautiful red. That's an apple red. It's a bright Christmassy red color. If you don't have this, you could use Naphtha Crimson. You could use engine red, just any nice, bright, cheery red color that you might have. And I'm going to switch to using the same brush that I used for the body of our snowman. And we're going to paint in solid the hat minus his rim. So it's the long stocking cap of his hat, as well as his 2 mittens. So you're going to just load your brush up good and solid with that red paint. And we're just going to try and paint as long and smooth strokes as you can to fill in. And our red may take 2 coats. We'll try and get it all done with 1 coat tonight, but you might want to let this coat dry or use a hairdryer to dry it and then come back with a 2nd coat. Don't be afraid to turn your work. I am here too, just to make sure that I get it all nice and smooth. And we always say paint with long, smooth strokes because that will help give you the coverage that you need as smoothly as we want it to be. Now there is a little pom-pom on the end of his tail here, so leave a little space for his pom-pom. Or maybe it's a her, but I think it's a him. You all will have to name your snowmen too. And so when you post your pictures on social media, you can let us know what the name of your snowman is.
Chris was using Ultramarine Blue at the beginning.
Yes.
We were wondering. And then also, did you clean your brush when you transitioned to the red? I think you just grabbed another brush, right?
I did have, it is clean, Dylan. I had cleaned it after I painted his body. It's the same brush that I used for his body. So I had cleaned the white and blue out. Perfect. And I just picked up the clean brush then to begin painting the red. And so now the red again is all just the stocking cap, and he's got a pair of mittens exposed. So everyone, it should be just neatly base coating in all of the red area. And I can see already that my background is beginning to dry. I don't know if it's because I'm here in the studio lights or we just have good airflow tonight, or maybe it's my hot air. Oh, my mittens are drying. My background is almost dry too. I'm going to do a little bit more here. 1 long smooth stroke. I think we should be able to get our red in 1 coat tonight. Sometimes it does take 2 coats to get a nice opaque red, but I think we're good tonight. We're just going to let that dry a little bit. What we're going to do next is we're going to work with the black or the licorice. If you don't have the licorice, again, remember I said you could use pure black. And I'm going to go to a much smaller brush now. I'm going to go down to like a number 4. If you'd rather work with your liner brush, you may do that too. What we're going to do is we're going to start painting the black stripes on his scarf here. So as you look at the pattern, you can determine which areas are the black areas. So either use a small flat brush or your liner brush, whichever is most comfortable for you. And let's just go ahead and begin painting in the stripes of his little scarf. He's got alternating black and white stripes. And for now, tonight's class, we're just going to go ahead and let that white of the canvas be exposed as the white, because again, of time's sake. If you wanted to, you could even come back and paint a different white in between, whatever is comfortable for you. I hope many of you are enjoying this class tonight and do decide to paint along with us. If you do, be sure and post socially. We love to see your work in our Facebook group, Let's Paint with Plaid. So we welcome you all to join that group and post your work. Andy and I teach there every Tuesday and Thursday, and we love to see your work. Be sure to use the hashtag Let's Paint Challenge, or if you post other areas, be sure and use the hashtag Michael's Classes, or Make It with Michael's, or even Plaid Crafts. Everyone here at Plaid loves to see your work as well.
And then as Chris is talking about that, I wanted to let you guys know about some classes that we have coming up that are pretty exciting. If you don't know, Michael's has started doing premium classes. Now these do have a fee, but you get so much more one-on-one time with the instructors in these classes, and they're much more in depth. So we have one coming up with Kira. Kira is going to be teaching a Mod Podge class on February 9th, and we would love to see you guys sign up. It's a new way to use Mod Podge. It's a collage, but it's a very atypical collage. So you'll learn a lot about the product and the process. And I'm going to go ahead and put that one in the chat.
Thank you, Dylan.
Yeah.
Yeah, and for those of you that had not heard about Michael's premium classes, we'll just share with you too that I think the class fees are $20 only, which is still such a deal. Absolutely. To be able to have a more limited size class and to be able to visit with the teacher more and learn more different techniques. And you all know Kira, she's an excellent teacher. And we also have 2 other premium classes this month too. Or I should say this month, meaning February. Today's the 31st. So coming up in February. And one is going to be on the 17th. And it's going to be a very fun reverse glass technique, which is perhaps something new and different for many people. And then on the 22nd of the month, we're going to have another premium class. And it's going to be held on that Tuesday and taught by none other than Donna Dewberry. She's going to share with everyone how to do some glass painting using the FolkArt method of decorative painting.
So we would love to see you guys sign up for those. Like Chris said, that second one is a mixture of Mod Podge and painting. And then, of course, Donna's signature florals. So those are classes you won't get just here in the wonderful community classroom. These are our premium classes, so you won't want to miss out on them.
Okay, if you have painted your scarf areas, the next thing we're going to do is do the black and white checkerboard on the band of the hat. And I'm going to switch to a liner brush. I'm going to switch to a round, a very small little round. It's going to be a #1 liner. And I used a little bit of water from my brush basin here and carried that water over to my little puddle of black here. Again, this is a Licorice. You could use pure black again. And I'm using the water to thin down that paint. I'm making it very thin and fluid so that I can draw line work real easily. And what I'm going to do, when you think about this cuff or this band of his hat, he's got like it's divided in half horizontally. So I'm going to start on one end. I'm hoping you can see this. I looked up. Yes. I'm going to start on one end, and I'm just in the middle of that band going to free form a line. And it doesn't have to be completely straight. I'm just going to divide it in half. So there's my band, and there's a line work showing that it's divided in half. And now what I'm going to do, when I look at this, I don't want just straight soldiers to make our checkerboard effect. I'm going to have some curving this way and some curving that way. So think about the shape of this band of the hat. So Think also about maybe perhaps parentheses. On the right-hand side, it's going to be a right-handed parentheses. On the left side, it's going to be a left-handed. So what we're going to do now is make the vertical marks to create our checkerboard. And I'm just going to, again, on this side, I'm going to slightly curve in. And when I get towards the center, I'll make more like a straight line. So again, this is my liner brush with thin down black paint. I'm using Licorice. And I'm going to now just add the lines here so you can see. So if you transferred the pattern that was provided, that's all fine. If you didn't, this is a good way to do it. And now what I'm going to do is just pick which ones are my alternate colors of the black and just real quickly paint those in. So this, you can switch and use a small little flat brush if you want, but I still have the black in my liner brush. So I'm just going to go ahead and paint the alternating squares, all black. And this can be done fairly quickly with your liner brush. So every other one on the top and every other one on the bottom is going to be a black square. We're making like a little checkerboard. And a couple more to go and I'll be done with mine. And two more. And the last little one here on the corner. Now you'll notice that mine has been outlined, but we're going to wait till every detail is done before we go back and outline. So what I'm going to move to now is let's go ahead and work on his face. There are two little dot eyes, and you can do a dot eye using a stylus and the ball point of a stylus. You can use the handle end of a paintbrush. You can use your liner brush and hand paint in the little circles. If you're new to painting, a good thing to do is to find something that you could use as a dotting tool and just kind of create that circle, drop it down, and then draw a circle. So what I did was I used my stylus. I have black on that end. I dipped down into the snowman's area of his eye, and then I drew a little circle. And that's a nice way to kind of give yourself a very small little circular black eye. And obviously you want to try and make your eyes the same size. And I'm just going to wipe that.
If you're trying to reference that scarf checkerboard pattern, you can look at Chris's scarf.
Yeah.
That you're wearing right now.
Yes, my scarf that I'm wearing tonight. Yes. Okay, that was good. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add just a touch of orange. This is pure orange that was on the supply list. So any bright, let me shake it up real, any bright carrot nose color is what you want to go ahead and get out onto your palette now. Well, mine's really, there we go. Okay. So we want a nice bright pure orange out onto our palette now. And I'm going to use my liner brush and I'm going to dip into this bright orange color. Our nose is, when you think about a carrot at the base, think about the carrot. It's almost like a long triangle. Okay, is that to where you all can see it? Yeah. So think about a long triangle shape when you get ready to put your snowman's nose on. But what I want you to do is start, I'm going to get just a little more fluid here. You're going to start at this base of the carrot. And I want you to just kind of scoot back and forth like you're wiggling in without drawing that triangle. You're just going to wiggle in and kind of get very small when you go up to the tip. So I'm going to start here where I think his nose is going to be. And I'm just going to very folk art like, very free form. We're just going to wiggle in a nose. And I want it to be jumpy and wiggly. I don't want it to be nice and smooth like a triangle shape. So I'll bring my palette up so you can see that closer. Can you see how it's kind of wiggly and jiggly? That's how I want you to build your snowman's nose. And if you want it to turn up a little bit on a corner on the tip, you're welcome to do that too. So go ahead and put his nose in. And I usually start the nose about in the middle of the face, and I just kind of wiggle it up. I like to have the carrot going up, and I'm going to give it just a little bit more color. And if you look at mine, you can see how wiggly and jiggly it is. That's how I want it. I want it to kind of folk arty looking. And now what we're going to do is we're going to move down because I want to put his cheeks in, but I want that carrot nose to dry a little bit first. So why don't we start shading our red areas? And that again is the cap here and his mittens. And I'm going to go pick up my small flat brush. I have like a number 8 here. And what I'm going to do with this number 8, I wanted to make sure it was clean. I'm going to load it solid with our red, our bright red. Again, my red is apple red. Filling both sides of the brush. And we're going to do a little bit of the black. Now I say little, it's going to be a very small touch of black. I'm going to bring my palette up front here so you can see. I'm going to dip in and get just a small amount of black on that brush. Just one little tiny tip or one little area of that brush is going to have a little bit of black on it. And I'm stroking in the same area. I'm not moving all over the palette. You can see my brush is just loading that right here. So when I'm all said and done, I'm going to have a little bit of burgundy on this side. This black with our bright red is going to make like a little bit of burgundy. So I'll do that again. And you can see here, I'm blending in the same spot. And now when I come over here, I've got just a little bit of burgundy on one side of the brush, and I've got that bright red on the other side. So we want a brush that's got red in it and a little bit of black on the edge to where you've blended it into a burgundy. And what we're going to do on our mittens, this hand is behind this hand. So we're going to bring that burgundy around here like a backward C stroke and along the base of the mitten. So we're just going to do that same patting motion, keeping the burgundy side of the brush right up next to where one mitten meets the other mitten. And then we're going to pat along the bottom or the base of that mitten as well. So I've got that burgundy, and that automatically, just by doing that, I can see now that one mitten is set back behind the other mitten. The mitten that is in the front, I'm reloading my brush, that's going to get shading right up to where the mitten meets his arm and along the bottom. So again, I'm just kind of patting that color on, kind of like the base here, just pat, pat, pat along the base. I'm going to reload my brush one more time, and we'll move up to the hat. And so again, you want to make sure that's blended really well on your palette. You don't want to see a very harsh streak of that black. You want it to look as though it's been blended to a burgundy. And what I'm going to do is the hat, let me use my pointer here. The bottom part of our tail of our hat comes all the way up here where it meets his head. So when I look at this one here, we're going to add the burgundy at the bottom, like where our poof is, where the pom-pom is, all the way up and along to the top of the hat. Can you see that? That's where we're going to pat that color along. So you may find it easier to turn your work upside down so that you're patting towards you. So we're just going to pat that color on from where our pom-pom is all the way up into that hat. And it helps to have your brush fully loaded, patting that color on, and let it kind of just trail away once it reaches up to the hat, up to his head area, I should say. Now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to wipe my brush. I don't need to really clean it, but I'm going to wipe it, and now I'm going to reload it again with just the red. And this time I'm going to pick up some of that bright orange. So we're going to have a brush filled with some of the red and some of that orange. And the orange is going to be the highlight color here on his mittens. So we are going to highlight on his thumb and across the front where his fingers would be. And on this one, it's just going to be on the thumb and then down this side a little bit. So with the side of the brush that has the orange in it, and again, that's pure orange, I'm going to highlight a little bit of a thumb. Oops, there we go. A little bit of the thumb with a little bit of the orange. And we're going to, and it may not be showing up enough for you. If it doesn't, I'm going to add a little bit of white to that side of the brush. I'm going to do it because I think it may not show up well enough on camera for you. I can see it in person, but there I added a little bit of white on my side of the brush that had the orange on it as well. And now you can see that a little bit better. And now we're going to bring that around to distinguish the two mittens again. So now the mittens have been both shaded and highlighted. And we want to do the same thing with our little hat too. He needs to have a little highlight on the hat. So when we look at the hat, the top portion of the hat that would be closest to the sky. So we're going to come from this side here all around the top and the top of the tail all the way down. So that is going to have the highlight, which is either the pure orange, or if you needed to highlight yours like I did and pick up a little bit more white, you can do that too. I'm going to turn my work upside down so I can pat along in the right direction.
Now, Chris is using a wax-coated palette paper pad from Michael's. We had a few questions about that. But you can use a lot of what you have around the house. Somebody suggested an old plastic lid. That's a great thing to work off of. Plates, styrofoam plates, anything you've got.
Yes, we love to work with wax paper palettes here at Plaid, but I know a lot of people even use styrofoam plates too, Dylan.
Yeah.
A lot of people will even just use a pane of glass and then just wipe that glass free every so often, or scrape away the paint after it dries on a glass palette. But we like our disposable wax paper palettes here, and we do get ours at Michael's. Yes. Okay, I think my carrot's dry enough, but we can move back to his cheeks. And what I'm going to do for his cheek is, and if we look at the cheeks here, they're blushed. He's out in the cold, so he's got rosy cheeks. We're going to take our brush I just used. I'm going to clean that out. So again, this is probably a number, I think this is a 6, no, this is an 8, a number 8 flat. And what I want to do is give him a little bit of cheek on both sides here. And I'm going to use just a small corner of my brush with a little bit of red, ever so little, you can see here. And I'm going to pick up a little bit of that orange too. I want a little bit of orange in my red. And what I'm going to do, once I get that brush loaded, I'm going to turn my brush straight up and down. I want the side of the brush that has the paint in it up to the ceiling. So the side of the brush that I'm holding it up this way, not flat, not flat. I'm going to, side of the brush that's got the paint in it is going to be up away from my snowman. So I'm going to hold it and I'm going to push down and just kind of tap. And I'm tapping ever so lightly to kind of give that more like a, almost a watercolor effect on his cheek. And that cheek color again is both the orange and the red. And again, it's just a pounce or a tapping. I'm tapping. I want that to be kind of almost watercolor effect. And I'll show you here on this one again too. Again, it's more watercolor and it's just tapped on. All right. Now what we're going to do is, let's see, I think I'll save my, well, let's go ahead and get his mittens. Get his lumps of coal on. So I'm switching to an even smaller flat brush that I have here. I have a number 2 flat brush. If you want to use your liner, go ahead and do that. And the lumps of coal are not perfect circles. They're just irregular, dabbed in a circular motion. So remember, lumps of coal, some could even have a little pointed edges if you want to, but they're just very irregular. And there are 3 lumps of coal at the bottom. Remember, we kind of shadowed already with our blue. And there are 2 lumps of coal here in the top. And again, this is very sporadic. It is not a solid, perfect circle. Okay. And now what we're going to do is let's go ahead and tap on some white for that pom-pom. I'm going to load up my same brush. I just swished out some of the black, and I'm just going to tap on white for the pom-pom. And then I'm going to tap on, you could use the gray, the black if you want, make a gray, or you can pick up and use a little bit of the blue. I still had white in my brush. I reached into the licorice, tapped off to the side and made kind of like a little gray. And now I'm tapping that on top. We're going to let that dry. So it's almost kind of like a medium gray little pom-pom right now. We'll let that dry and we'll come back and we'll highlight with a little bit of the white. All right, let's move real quickly onto his hearts. He's got a heart here and there's several hearts all the way around. The last and final step we'll do is some line work, which just seals the whole deal and puts it together. These hearts are the easiest hearts ever to make. And what I'm going to do, I'm going to go ahead and keep using this same flat brush. This is a number 2. You could also use a number 4 flat brush. If you want a larger heart, move up to a number 8 or a number 10 flat brush. The wider the flat brush you have, the bigger the heart you're going to make. These hearts are so easy and they're just randomly scattered around. You can make as many as I have. You can leave them off. You could do more, do less, do them in all different directions, or you can even trace and transfer the pattern that we provided so that yours are exactly like mine. But we're going to start with that small little flat brush and we're going to load it completely with our red. Again, my red is apple red, and the heart is just simply one stroke this way, turn your piece, and one stroke this way. And it's the width of the brush that's going to make the determine the size of your heart. So let's do one here on the palette. So I'm loading mine up with the apple red. And let me just pull this down here and I'll show you. The heart is going to be one stroke this way and lift, and one stroke this way and lift. So that's all there is to this heart. He's got a heart on his chest, and however many hearts you want to paint around your design, and just go ahead and paint on just the V shape here of the hearts. Don't worry about trying to make a very fancy heart and give him a poofy. This is more of a folk arty type heart, and they're just straight lines. So you have almost like you're painting a V, if you think about it that way. You're painting one stroke, changing the direction to make the V, and paint the other stroke. And I am making these solid red right now. We can come back and we are going to shade them. And you can even highlight them if you want, just like we did our mittens. So we'll let this dry a little bit, and then we'll come back with a little bit of the apple red and the licorice to shade the bottom of each heart. And we'll use a little bit of that orange and or the orange plus a little bit of white to highlight the top of the hearts. So make as many hearts as you want. Simple, simple little folk art hearts. This is a project that to me is so simple. Even you could sit down with your grandchild or your child and have them paint along with you. I'll add one more here in the bottom. All right, now while I still have the red in my brush, I just knocked a little bit off onto my paper towel, but I'm going to keep that red in my brush. I'm not going to clean. And I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to pick up a little bit of that black. I've got a lot right now, so we need to tone it down. I'm going to pick up a little bit more red. So again, we're making that burgundy on just one corner of that brush by mixing the apple red and our black, which again, mine is licorice. With that burgundy now, I'm going to pull mine up so you can see the base of each heart is shaded just like we shaded our mittens with that darker color. Look at how the base of each heart is shaded with that black or that burgundy. The top two sections of the heart are all highlighted with that same mixture of that pure orange. You could even add a little bit of white if you want to. So what we're going to do now is just go ahead and shade the bottom of your hearts. with that brush that has the side of the brush that has the burgundy color in is going to the outside of that shape of each heart. And I am just patting on a little bit of that deep shading color at the base of each of my hearts. If you need to, stop, reload your brush, redress your brush. Always brush mix it on your palette to make sure that you've got a nice mixture before you go take it to your project surface, to your canvas. These are some of the easiest and most simplest hearts you can paint. I hope you all are understanding all the projects so far this evening and having a good time.
Yeah, everybody has commented on the tips and techniques that they learned and that they think this technique is nice and simplified for them to do. So I think everybody's really happy.
Good, good. Yeah, I like to paint whimsy. I like to teach beginners, and I like to do things in a very simple, hopefully easy to understand way. And so I'm glad to know that y'all are having a good time. I can't wait to see you all post projects with your little snowmen. This little project could be so cute, painted on so many different things, even like little wooden signs would be really cute. All right, now what I did while I finished the dark part of all of my hearts, I'm going to now add the top part. And as I said, that little highlight is a little bit of our orange, plus I'm going to add a little bit of white to mine. And I'm just going to pat, pat, pat the top of each little heart. It's so simple, so easy. And again, that is a little bit of the pure orange. You can leave it just with the orange. You can add a little bit of white to the orange to make it stand up a little bit more. I'm adding a little more white to mine. And it's just a pat, pat, pat along the top there. The next step we'll do after this will be kind of like the icing on the cake. We're going to begin to do some of the line work. That's really going to start to add the personality to our snowman, because he'll get his smile, his hat and his body and his mittens are all going to be outlined. All these little hearts are going to be outlined. Excuse me. And it just kind of puts the finishing touches on things. I'm going to show you, I'm holding up my sample right now, and his smile. Let's start with his smile. He's got just a really nice broad smile and then two little dashes on either end of that smile. And I'm holding it up so that you can see the carrot too. That carrot has got a little wiggly black line at the bottom of his little shape of his carrot. So that's what we'll start with first to kind of finish off his face. I'm going back to my liner brush that we used to divide the checkerboard of his band of his hat. I'm adding water from my brush, from my little brush basin here, to my little puddle of our black paint, thinning it down. Whenever you do line work with a liner, you want that paint nice and fluid and very thin so that the paint will flow off of that paintbrush and you can just make long, smooth lines, okay? Make sure that paint is fluid enough to be able to do line work or just do hash marks. Make sure if it's not thin enough and it doesn't feel like it's flowing well enough, then it's not going to flow well on your surface too. So what we're going to do is almost connect where our two cheeks are, and we're going to make from one tip. I want to make sure everything's dry underneath. You're going to make from one like section of the cheek all the way over to the other one. And you can make a long, smooth line if you want. You can make a little jiggly, wiggly line if you want. And then give him his two little like smile lines here on the end, up on into his cheeks. On the bottom of that carrot, we're going to start at the base of the carrot and then kind of wiggle, 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 wiggle all the way up to the top. So we're, oops, let me see. There we are. We're going to give that little nose some movement. Now, everything else is just simply going to be outlined. Let's move on to his hat. When you look at his hat here and also on your pattern, you're going to see that I gave the hat a little bit of detail of some banding here at the bottom. So I'm going to just, I'll show you here, make like a little rectangle shape, if you will. And then I'm going to fill that in. And there's 2 of those little black bands here at the tip of his hat. So just go ahead and draw yourself a little band and then fill that in. And you can do that all with your liner brush. And I'm going to give him another one a little bit further up. And I'm filling that in. And then if you look at the pattern on his hat, either the picture, if you printed out the picture and or on your pattern, you'll see that besides these 2 wide bands, I also threw in a couple just lines, like another pattern line in his sweater or in the hat shape itself, and make whatever kind of design you want. So I added a little more detail at the tip of my hat just by adding those black bands and a couple little straight lines. And now what you're going to do is just outline everything. I like to outline kind of more with a loose wavy line, and I'm using just the tip of my brush. And again, my paint is nice and fluid, very thin. It's very easy to move my brush across the surface. And I like more of a whimsical look, so I'm going to do more like a wavy line. And I'm almost done with this hat. I'll show you how I did the red portion of the hat. Can you all see? It's not necessarily a long, smooth line. I love more when there's character to it and it gives you a little bit more texture. It doesn't even have to be exact following the red. Notice this area right here. I love when I have little bumps that go outside of the area. It just is perfect for those of you that are afraid to work with the liner brush, or maybe a little nervous about doing line work, because you don't have to be perfect with this. Sometimes I think the more imperfect we are with our liner work in this style of painting, the cuter your painting is. So just continue working. I'm working from the top down so that I don't get my hands in my work. Fill your brush up every so often as you feel the need. Again, that brush needs to be filled with very thin, fluid paint so that when you move that brush around in that wiggly movement, it's just going to be natural. And I'm just going to go ahead around, make his head. I'm going to work on the scarf area and go all the way out to the edges. The scarf also has some fringe, which we'll add here in just a moment. Just go for now, go ahead and get everything kind of outlined.
So we had a good question. When is it time to outline the snowman? Can one use a superfine liner black pen?
You know, Dylan, I was almost going to say that because I get that question all the time. And that is such a good question. Yes, if you are not happy to try and work with a liner brush, I will let you cheat. And yes, you are cheating. We are in a learn to paint class. I want you to at least try using your liner brush first. If it is something that's very, very uncomfortable for you, or you feel like you haven't practiced enough with a liner brush, yes, I will let you. You may go ahead and get your permanent marker out, and you may do your line work with your permanent marker. But do try, please, to use that liner brush, because it is a painting skill that can be practiced and learned by just about anyone. But that is another way to do this, yes. I almost brought it up, Dylan, because we get asked that question all the time. But I was hoping everyone would have enough courage to use their liner brushes tonight. All right, now I have mine pretty much all outlined. What I'm going to do while I still have my liner brush is I'm going to outline these hearts. And remember, these hearts are just simply straight lines. It's more boxy than it is round and poofy when you think of like a Valentine heart. So go ahead and outline all your hearts now. And these, I did not wiggle as much. I kind of did follow the shape of my heart that I painted. And we're getting close to our hour. Oh, yes, we are. I just looked at the time. I'm going to do a couple more things and then we'll be done. And I've got one more heart on mine, on his chest yet to do. Okay, now what I'm going to do, oh, I shouldn't have cleaned my brush. Well, I still have that brush filled with the thinned black and the licorice. I want you to go ahead and paint 3 across the bottom of each of his little scarf tails. Paint 3 small little dots, and I added them on the end of this one here. And do the same thing on the next one. 3 small little dots. This will be the start of our ball fringe that's on the bottom of each of the scarf tails. And from each ball, you're going to paint out some fringe. And I'm going to think about parentheses again. I'm going right and left. That's one there that started. And then I'm going to do a few more strokes in the middle. So I want there to be some real fluid movement on each of those little tassels of the ball fringe. So think about a parentheses first and then kind of fill in that parentheses. All right. They're not straight soldiers and they're varying lengths on the end of the scarf there. Very quickly done. And again, you could use your marker if you want. All right, there we go. So the fringe is now on the end of this scarf. And we're going to go back to our white with a small flat brush. We're going to add a little accent of white, just tapping more white on the pom-pom. So I added a little bit more white just to kind of give it a little more dimension. Our snowman's eyes have 2 little dots of white. So you can either use the tip of your liner brush. You can also go back to using your little stylist here, but you're going to dot 2 little dots in your eyes. And I dot them about 1 o'clock. If you think about a clock, dot them about 1 o'clock. And it's both about the same size dot. That just gives a little highlight to those eyes. All right. Now, one thing when you look at mine, we haven't talked about the lettering yet, but when you look at mine, my background has a little bit of dark gray around these edges here. Sometimes I do this, and the reason why I do this is because when you have your corners darkened, it draws your eye into the focal point of what you've painted. So I wanted my edges to be dark. You don't necessarily have to. Here's one that's, without the darkening, one with the darkening. If you choose to add some color to the outside edges, I'm going to clean my brush. What I would do is just pick up your 3/4 inch flat brush. I want to make sure mine's completely dry. And what we're going to do is you can either, well, let's just do that. You can take your palette knife and make a little gray off to the side, or you can brush mix, but sometimes it's easier just to make a gray. I'm just going to make a small amount to show you a corner or 2. Okay, I've got some gray mixed. And with that large clean, this is a 3/4 inch flat brush, I'm going to fill that brush with some of that gray color, not across the full width of the brush, but just on a corner. And I'm going to come in and just kind of tap that paint on dry. So this is kind of just dry, scrubbing this into the corner and scrubbing it out and kind of letting it blend a little bit up the canvas. Of course, you want to make sure your hearts are dry before you do that. And this is what I did to kind of darken all of my edges. And you can, if you plan to frame yours, you don't have to worry about these sides. But if you're not going to frame, then go ahead and darken in the corner here so that your sides of your canvas will blend in with what you have on the top, if that makes sense. So if you're going to frame it, don't worry about the side. If you're not going to frame it and you want to hang it on, then always make sure your edges here match whatever you're painting on the top. So this is what I did to all four of my corners to darken it. And I also wanted to share with you that I did, because mine's a little bit darker on all the corners now, I wanted to add the fact that he was in a snowstorm. You can see it here across this top that I'm really focusing in really right now. To create that little bit of snow, you're going to take some white. I'm going to add some fresh on my palette. And I am going to use an old toothbrush. I keep one in my artist arsenal all the time. I'm going to add some water to that toothbrush and bring some of that water over here to my palette. I'm going to make sure you can see here, bringing it over a little bit further. So I'm bringing some water to my palette. You can see the beads of water there. I'm going to touch into that puddle of the white, and I want to thin that paint down a little bit. You have to be careful. There is a happy medium. This technique is what we call fly specking, and you want to just create a little dusting of little speckles of color. And I'll test here on my palette, on my blue shop towel, I think you'll be able to see. And I'm going to run the bristles of my toothbrush across my finger, or run my finger across the bristles of the toothbrush. And I'm going to let this kind of just fly speck and speckle out wherever I want that snow to appear on my little canvas. So you can, I have a piece of wax paper palette here on my table, so you can protect your work surface first, or you can open up a paper towel and put that paper towel down so that you are now making sure that you protect your surface. And I'm just going to splatter across my snowman as heavily a snowstorm as you want him to be in. It's all totally your choice, your idea. And I will tell you that when you fly spec, it's best to test first on your surface or on a paper towel, because you'll want the speckles to be just the right amount of color. If you use too much water, the fly specks get very large and they don't look like snow anymore. They'll be too large and too bulky. If you want it to be more like a fine snow or a fine dot of color, then you want to use less moisture. So you do need to test off to the side. The last and final thing that we did not yet cover is our love is in the air. This is on the pattern sheet. Each of you can do this by tracing and transferring the pattern if you want, or you can take a pencil and you can write using your own handwriting if you want to write the message that you want, if you want to change it. Let me get my liner brush. And let's see, we have a little, I'll just do the word love for you real quick, because I know we're running late, but I'm going to go ahead and start with my little heart first. We have our little heart here. And I won't take the time to shade and highlight that heart, because it's done exactly like all of the hearts are that we've done. I'm using my liner brush and I'm thinning it with a good fluid consistency of our black. And I'm just going to hold that brush straight up and down so that just the tip of the bristles of the brush are touching the surface. And I'm just going to start, and very fluid, loosely, I'm going to paint the words. And I have the heart as our O. There's a V. And we'll bring this down and we'll make an E. There's love.
See, everybody, that's why you want to learn how to use a liner brush, so you can do that like Chris with no pattern. It's quite the skill. Right.
Love is in. And I'm making sure my brush is good and full each and every time I stroke. Love is in the air. And then, of course, sign your name wherever you want. I signed mine going up the side of the snowman here. And that's all there is to our little snowman today. I hope you all had a great time painting him. He was, I know, very quickly done, but the video and the recording for this is going to be available on Michael's YouTube channel. And within what, 12 to 24 hours, they usually say, and it will be out there. You can then watch it, and it's sometimes so much easier to paint along with the video after the class because you can pause, rewind, watch again, and just have a fun time painting. I cannot wait to see all these snowmen that you all are going to paint and post. Remember to use the social hashtags. Make it with Michael's classes, Plaid Crafts. And if you are in our Let's Paint group posting there, be sure and use the Let's Paint Challenge hashtag. I hope you all had a great time. Dylan, do we have any last minute questions?
No, I think everybody's thanking you for the class. They're all loving it and thanking
Great.
Michael's.
Well, great. Thank you for moderating, Dylan. And thank you, Amanda, for being with us tonight. So until next time, y'all, I hope, oh, wait, I forgot. I've got to share with you when I said next time, I remembered.
Okay.
Next Monday night, you want to join us next Monday night because sitting here in this chair, you're going to find Jessie Jennings, and she's got a great little Valentine project for you. Look how cute this is. It's called Candy Hearts. So this is all scheduled for Jessie to teach this on February the 7th. That will be next Monday night. So I hope you all enjoyed our little Love is in the Air today. And I hope you all will join Jessie next Monday night. So until next time, I hope you all had a great time. And I'm Chris Williams saying goodbye. So thank you so much for coming.
Bye, guys.